The era of dominance for Blackwood Pharmaceuticals in the pharmaceutical industry is beginning. Claire, a young woman, signs an agreement to participate in the testing of a new drug and arrives at an isolated underground facility. Barely having time to settle in, she discovers another participant, Allison, an overly curious and talkative girl who immediately bombards Claire with questions. She reveals that there are only 3 women in their group and admits that it's her first time taking part in such a program. Claire asks her to let her rest, but at that moment, all participants are summoned to a common room where all 6 test subjects gather. It quickly becomes clear that there is no internet access, and communication with the outside world has been cut off. Dr. Berg, the lead researcher, explains that over the course of 5 days, the drug dosage will be gradually increased, and the participants will be under constant observation to identify any potential side effects. Subjects are required to remain within the facility. Any outings or meetings are strictly prohibited, as specified in the contract. After receiving the first dose of the drug, everyone heads to the dining area. It turns out the male participants are experienced in such testing programs. Ray shares that a friend of his once earned 50,000 euros from an experiment involving artificial cardiac arrest, hinting at the potentially high payment. The guys warn Claire about Vanessa, describing her behavior as quite strange, something attributed to a difficult childhood in a family of religious fanatics. The experiment begins. Claire undergoes regular examinations and fills out questionnaires. By the end of the day, she feels extreme fatigue, yet Allison keeps trying to chat with her, only worsening Claire's condition. Suddenly, Claire feels sick and rushes to the restroom. In the hallway, she runs into Amir, who tells her that they're testing a drug intended to combat insomnia, seasickness, and similar symptoms. Being a medical student, he had hoped to see how a pharmaceutical company operates from the inside, but now he's beginning to doubt his decision. That night, Claire can't sleep and leaves her room, discovering that the other participants are also awake. Everyone is experiencing sleep issues, and those who have participated in similar studies before are starting to get suspicious. In the morning, Dr. Berg dismisses their concerns, viewing mild insomnia as an insignificant issue. Amir offers his help, referencing his medical background, but she refuses. 30 hours pass and no one has managed to fall asleep. Meanwhile, Dr. Berg calls the project lead and reports that all participants are showing signs of inflammation, and the drug dosage specified in the protocol is questionable, as the brain scans indicate abnormally high activity. At the same time, Claire and Allison watch the lab mice. Claire confesses that she sometimes dreams of living in a cage, being fed and cared for, free from the constant struggle to survive. Later, Dr. Berg announces a change in the experiment's terms. The new task is to stay awake for as long as possible. During a brain scan, Claire admits to having claustrophobia, which began in childhood when she was locked in a closet. She starts screaming, and they immediately release her. Trying to comfort her friend, Allison shares her experience of coping with post-traumatic stress disorder, explaining how she plays Tetris in her mind. She suggests Claire try it and begins humming the game's melody. At first, Claire is irritated by Allison's persistence, but gradually she relaxes and even begins to laugh. Soon, the participants notice that the drug dosage is increasing. Ray refuses his dose, and Paul decides to take only half. The purpose of the research starts to deeply concern them. Dr. Berg introduces a new incentive. The participant who makes it to the end will receive a 30,000 euros reward. Everyone is thrilled, except Claire and Amir, who exchange anxious glances. Later, Allison invites Claire to dance, but Claire can't relax, suspecting a trick behind such a generous reward. Still, she joins the others. Suddenly, she begins to feel drowsy. The doctor watches the participants closely as they begin to yawn one by one. She informs the management that the subjects' immune systems are collapsing and demands that the experiment be stopped, but her request is denied, and she's ordered to increase the dosage. That night, people begin dreaming of how they'll spend the money. Paul plans to travel, Allison wants to study, and Claire dreams of owning a home. At that moment, Amir, passing by Dr. Berg's office, overhears her pleading for the experiment to be halted. After she leaves, he sneaks inside and copies data from her computer. Meanwhile, Claire approaches Allison and sees her sleeping. Suddenly, blood starts flowing from Allison's nose and eyes. Her body convulses, and she dies, shocking everyone. At that moment, Dr. Berg enters the room. Suddenly, a message announces a protocol breach. The doctor panics and runs, while a voice warns that lockdown will be initiated in 30 seconds. Everyone chases after her. Dr. Berg manages to reach the closing door, but the locking mechanism pierces her with metal spikes. She dies, managing only to whisper an apology. To stay alert, Amir offers smelling salts to everyone, but warns against overusing stimulants. He even bans coffee, considering it a catalyst for deterioration. After evacuation, they'll be prescribed immunosuppressants to slow brain activity, and in critical cases, a medically induced coma. Waiting for the end of the protocol becomes unbearable, as insomnia has now lasted over 100 hours. Paul suggests recording video messages to tell the world what's happening. The others join him, sharing their suffering on camera. Amir keeps a close watch on everyone's condition, trying not to show the horror he feels as the data worsens. Claire's state deteriorates. She begins hallucinating her mother's voice. She records a message for her, but deletes it. Wandering into the lab, she releases a mouse from its cage, only to see it return immediately. Time drags unbearably. Ray runs out of smelling salts and begins begging others to share. Vanessa confesses she lost faith in God, which is why she left home. Amir tries to keep working but is increasingly distracted by hallucinations. Claire hears her mother's lullaby more clearly now. She's about to fall asleep, but Marcus wakes her, telling stories of his mountain hikes and belief in human resilience. Claire finds her personal file on Dr. Berg's computer, which details her desperate situation, something that makes her an ideal candidate for a high-risk study. In the kitchen, she sees Vanessa trying to stay awake by holding her hand over the open flame of the stove. The two women admit that life has been cruel to them, but they're not ready to die. Marcus is haunted by auditory hallucinations. He follows a whistling sound and vanishes into the darkness. His death mirrors Allison's fate. The others find his body and try to support each other. There are only 15 hours left. Claire deliberately burns her hand, then suggests they find a way out on their own or risk being trapped there forever. She draws a rough floor plan from memory and proposes breaking through a wall. Amir objects and walks away, but the others, using fire safety equipment, break the wall only to find a layer of metal behind the bricks. An argument breaks out. Claire insists they try the next wall. Suddenly, Ray suspects that Amir knows everything happening at Blackwood, possibly because he works for them. Paul reminds everyone that Amir hasn't been sleeping either. At that moment, Amir appears and reveals that after analyzing the data, he discovered that the brains of sleeping individuals remain active and accelerate to critical levels. Their only chance is to escape the bunker and hope for outside help. However, according to the safety protocol, the doors are locked for 24 hours. Later, Amir confesses to Claire that he caused the malfunction while trying to illegally copy data, which ultimately led to the current situation. Now desperate, he says he's ready to take his own life. Claire tries to ground him in reality, saying that if the brain is like a machine, its function can be adjusted. Suddenly, a spark of inspiration hits him. They need to use a specific compound that could temporarily slow down brain activity, potentially stabilizing their condition. Claire sends Amir to prepare the necessary medication while she rushes to inform the others. But Paul shares his suspicion about Amir, having found a stimulant in his belongings, the same substance Amir had forbidden others to use. Suddenly, the lights go out in the shelter. Paul recalls the circuit breaker in the brain scanning room, and they rush there. Claire hears her mother's voice again while Paul urges her to focus on him. Suddenly, he goes silent. Claire tries to see him in the flicker of her lighter, but all she sees are the faces of the dead. Eventually, she locates the circuit box and restores the power. Paul is sitting in the hallway, and Claire manages to bring him back to his senses. The group storms to confront Amir, demanding answers. He denies using stimulants. Ray attacks him, and the others restrain him. Amir begs them to calm down, insisting he's innocent and denying any involvement in the blackout. He even says he doesn't know where the circuit box is located. To uncover the truth, Ray is ready to resort to violence. Upon seeing a knife, Claire speaks up about the drug Amir proposed and volunteers to test it on herself. Under Amir's guidance, Paul begins synthesizing the medication. At that moment, Vanessa confesses to Ray that she saw him deliberately switch off the power. Ray admits he did it to force a confession out of Amir regarding his ties to Blackwood. In response, she shows him a vial of sedative and suggests injecting it into Amir to get the truth. Meanwhile, Amir explains the drug's mechanism to Claire, warning that it's extremely dangerous and could be fatal. He also admits to reading their personal files, discovering that they are all loners with no family or jobs, people whose disappearances would go unnoticed. Paul finally finishes preparing the drug, and Amir gives final instructions. But Vanessa draws the sedative into a syringe and suddenly collapses in convulsions. As Paul tries to help her, he accidentally shatters the vial with the drug. Vanessa dies and Amir panics. Claire tries to calm him down. She leaves the room to collect herself, but the eerie lullaby grows louder. She records another message for her mother, recalling her drunken episodes. Then she collapses, feeling an unseen force lifting her into the air. She reaches desperately for a packet of smelling salts and finally grabs it. At the same time, she realizes that one of the walls is hollow. Breaking through it with Paul, they discover a room that turns out to be a morgue. At the same time, the ghost of Dr. Berg appears to Amir, pointing to a nearby surgical knife and urging him to take control. Meanwhile, Ray finds Amir's written confession, in which he takes responsibility for the isolation. Paul and Claire realize that the morgue leads to an elevator meant for transporting bodies. Claire wants to alert the others, but Paul insists they escape immediately. At the same time, Ray, wielding the scalpel, confronts Amir with the note. Amir breaks free from his restraints, causing Ray to accidentally stab himself. Amir finishes him off with the knife. Claire returns and pleads with Amir to drop the blade, but his mind is gone. He chases her. Seeing this, Paul slams the door shut behind her. Amir throws Claire onto the tomography table and raises the knife, but the blade is pulled away by the machine's magnet. Claire dashes to the elevator they discovered, but the cabin turns out to be a cremation chamber. Paul dies in the fire. Claire grabs a pair of scissors, ready to defend herself from Amir, but his strength fails him. Suddenly, the entrance doors swing open. Amir rushes toward the light, only to be met by armed personnel. Claire hears gunshots, runs to the door, and sees black body bags. Covered in blood, she crawls into one of them. The bags are loaded into a van, and it drives off. Claire remembers Allison and begins playing Tetris in her mind. Then she crawls out of the bag, startling the driver. He loses control, and the van crashes. Claire escapes, but collapses by the roadside after only a few steps. Later, Blackwood is exonerated despite the deaths of 6 people. Claire remains in a coma. Investigators conclude that Dr. Berg was conducting illegal research unbeknownst to the company. Blackwood's reputation is restored, and the company expresses sorrow for the deceased and hope for a better future. But Claire wakes up. Despite its modest budget, the film is stylish and well-crafted for a horror movie. The plot builds relentless tension minute by minute. Alongside hallucinations, it features brutal and bloody scenes, offset by a relatively hopeful ending.